Great, we are live. Hello, everybody. And for those of you who do not know me, I am Suki and I am a certified life and professional coach based in New Zealand, helping ambitious professionals to redefine their grind. And I used to be an agile coach in technological companies, helping teams and leaders to perform better. Who we have today is Erica Austin, who is an experienced curator, community weaver, facilitator, mentor, Christchurch ambassador, photographer. She plays a number of roles and she also has her own business, EA Curation, which is all about creating inclusive and impactful experiences for companies, governments, not-for-profits, and startups. So, and she's also got a master's degree in architecture. So it is my warm pleasure to welcome Erica.
Kia ora koutou, ko Erica toku ingoa. Thank you for having me, Suki. It's a pleasure for me to be on the show.
Great. That's so awesome. And I've known Erica actually since high school. So that was a long time ago. And today I really want to ask you, like, what happened between high school till now, playing out your multi-potentialite self, like going into all those passions that you have? That is really amazing.
Yeah, it's really great to reconnect with you, Suki. We go way back, and I guess since high school, at the end of my last year in high school, I actually only just decided I wanted to do architecture. So I only spent half a year putting together my portfolio to submit to the University of Auckland architecture school, and that was sort of I guess partially because I was inspired by my parents, both structural engineers, but also my passion for creativity and design. And I was like, what is the intersection of that? And I thought architecture was such a good career path because it really helps me understand how to create cities, how to create spaces that we live in and work in.
Yeah, and from that understanding, I saw that after architecture degree, you actually went to Christchurch, was to recreate Christchurch as a city or to help recreate.
Yeah, and so for those of you who don't know that the master's degree, to complete the master's degree in architecture is a 5-year journey. And so the first 3 years, basically I went from not understanding architecture to really understand what architecture serves in our community, in our society. And it's not just about designing buildings, which I like intentionally went into architecture thinking and then came out of it being like, whoa, actually this taps into so many other different aspects of our lives. And so in 2011, when I went into the first year of masters, we started projects on the rebuild of Christchurch. So the first earthquake happened in September 2010, and the first semester in 2011 was like, boom, we're gonna start looking at concepts on various parts of rebuilding Christchurch, and that's how I started to think, okay, this might be a really cool place for me to be and to learn from, you know, the locals around stories and how to create a city basically from scratch. You know, like it's a blank canvas. 80% of the city centre has been wiped out by the earthquake. And at the time, the government and local sort of stakeholders has brought out the 100-day plan, the blueprint, and that's what the studios and architecture school were working like based upon. And the last year of masters, which was 2012, I got the opportunity to base my thesis for the whole year around Christchurch Rebuild, and my thesis was all about creating an experience economy. And so how do we use architecture to be a catalyst for economic growth, for, you know, weaving the social sort of movement and social architecture, as I call it, back into the city. And I got a chance to come down here in Christchurch about 7 or 8 times as part of that. And in the process of that, I got the opportunity to be a project assistant on an architectural festival called Festival of Transitional Architecture, Festa. And in the Labour weekend that it happened, over 6 hours, we brought back over 20,000 people back into the city. And that just blew my mind. Yeah, and I was like, what have we done? I was tearing up. I was in the middle of streets surrounded by families, you know, businesses and community organizations and lots of, you know, activations, performances, food, and amazing, you know, installations that were done by architecture and design students across the country. And I'm like, this is what architecture means to me. This is what I want to continue creating. And then after graduating, I basically jumped on a plane, and with no work or accommodation sorted, I came straight to Christchurch. And that was the start of my journey here.
Wow, that is such a brave move of yourself to jump on a plane with nothing really other than yourself with a suitcase to restart a new life with Christchurch restarting at the same time. And when you talked about architecture creating experiences to bring people together, that is so amazing. And I can see the passion in your eyes as you talk about it. So from jumping onto a plane into a whole new city, how did you get yourself involved in so many different things and also starting your own business?
Yeah, so it's like you've mentioned, it's a new life in a city that is renewing itself. And so for me, that really resonated with the stage that I was at, because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. Yes, I finished a master's in architecture, but do I really want to become an architect? You know, and seeing some of my friends go through it, I'm like, do I want the life that they have? And the answer actually ended up being no. I don't really want to just, you know, be in an office dedicated to drawing details for buildings, when I can actually be involved in so many different things, as I did when I was project assisting the festival in my last year of study. And so I ended up volunteering for a whole year. And I had a bike that I used. It was a $50 bike. I basically did a lot of random jobs just to make ends meet for a whole year. And the reason for that was, for me to understand the city, I really need to engage with it fully before I make a decision around what I wanted to do. And so at that stage, I ended up volunteering at a temporary architecture that was designed by my architectural thesis advisor, that was also who was also based in Christchurch. It was called the Palette Pavilion. It was a temporary pavilion that was built by volunteers, and also you know, created space for lots of community groups to host events, birthday parties for kids. You know, there was a temporary bar, and I was there as a volunteer barista, making coffees for people. And that was a skill that I bought from my uni days when I part-timed as a barista. And so I was like, hey, I've got the skill. This is a way for me to understand the city. And that's how I started knowing what it means to network without you know, actually putting that word against my action, was basically just having the time to have a conversation with someone in the community. And that's how I started making all of these connections within different sectors. And when work came about, they were like, hey, Erica, do you want to get involved in this? And I'm like, totally, you know, I know you from my volunteering days. Let's work together. Let's collaborate together to make a difference in the community.
Wow. What I'm really hearing that is coming out really strongly is that you are offering yourself. You're offering the skills that you have. You're being very open to whatever that is coming. And from those connections, you're getting more and more connections and more work that is off that. That is so brave. Very, very, very inspiring.
Yeah, and being naive as I was, back then, I think at the time I was like, what's the worst that could happen? The worst that could happen is that I will put a CV out to architecture firms, get an actual architectural job, and start there, or I'll come back to, or go back to Auckland, and go back to my old life. And so that was sort of the plan B. But it never happened.
It didn't need to happen, the plan
B. It didn't need to happen. Yeah, exactly.
Because plan A is working out really well from all those connections that you're getting, people pulling you in to do a bit of this and do a bit of that. And is that how you have been able to weave all your talents together? There's like photography, there's curation, there's mentoring, there's also facilitating, everything that you do, that you offer.
Yeah, it's quite fascinating because at that time I didn't know I was a multipotentialite. And I think it really goes back to my childhood when Mum insisted on exposing me to multiple different like hobbies and different things outside of school. And so I sort of continued to do that. And another thing that my mum taught me was that make sure you do your homework when you get back from school, and then you can play. And that means that you've got everything done on your to-do list, and then you can rest and really enjoy it. And so I've kept those two sort of in the back of my mind to be like, okay, this is my chance to expose myself in a new city to multiple different things. It's a way for me to make friends. It's a way for me to, tap into things that I'm curious, things that I want to learn. But also being able to take action. So being a multipotentialite is one thing of like having multiple passions, but following through is something that I've learned from my mum. And so I would sort of equate myself as a multipotentialite plus an action nerd, with the basis of someone who is curious and wants to continuously learn to make an impact in the community.
Yeah, also a doer, because sometimes I've got quite a few different passions, but then with a G, or my memory bank is only so little. Yeah, that's a really good point, combining those passions with the things that with the action point, so that you're carrying that out. Yeah, and what is life like now that I understand that you've also got a baby who is how many months old? 3 months old?
No, he's actually 7 months now, which is still quite tiny. But I think because before I had a baby, about 2 years ago, I started my business called EA Curation. And the only reason why is because I wanted to embrace all of my different passions and all of the areas that I work in. And using my, continuously growing skills to benefit the people that I work with. And that's the only reason, because, as you can probably see on my LinkedIn, I have so many different titles.
Yes.
And so, stats have shown that an average person will have 5 to 7 careers in their lifetime. But I have 5 to 6 careers at one time. and that really helps me sort of, I thrive in chaos. I'm a chameleon, I love multiple different things, and the different skills that I bring to one project is massive. The value that I bring to the project, because I have, tapped into all of these different sectors and communities, I'm able to bring my whole self into one project. And so there's never a time when someone's like, oh, can you only do the event, production bit? I can also bring, the stakeholder engagement, the facilitation, the emceeing, the curation of the whole experience, the comms piece, everything that goes into it. And that's what I do best.
And I guess that really gives you an advantage over other providers that they might be looking at, because you are curating the whole experience for them. Yeah, and then you've combined everything that you've got to offer, instead of, yeah, I think a lot of us can think, oh, a career is just this. I do this. I'm an architect, and therefore I draw papers. And then I'm a lawyer, therefore I do this, rather than this is my whole self. This is what I'm bringing. Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
so awesome that you're able to do that. And what advice would you have for other people that want to embrace all selves that they have to offer to their work?
I think the one thing is to be brave and just tell it like it is. Because
Mm,
the thing that I struggle with being a multi-potentialite or a doer in the community, or a serial volunteer, is that
mm,
people often don't know what I do.
mm,
And when I'm volunteering, they think it's a paid gig, or if I'm
mm.
getting paid for a certain thing, they think I'm volunteering. And so there's a lot of a lot of different people with confusion, um, not knowing what I do. And so I think the best thing to do is to say, hey, I'm a multi-potentialite. I have
Mm,
multiple different passions, and I dip into different things because I'm curious, but I'm also really good at executing things. And so
mm.
that's the advice, is just tell it like it is, and be brave to to tell people that you've got all of these passions and you want to live your whole self. You want to bring your
Yeah,
whole self.
yeah, that's really amazing, because for our brains, people often think, oh, this person fit into this box, and therefore we'll use this person for that. Whereas that you're like, this is all I'm offering. It's quite a different mindset for people to shift, whether it's shifting that internally or helping others to shift that mindset in themselves.
Mm. And the other thing that I would say, as an advice, is to continue to build deeper relationships with people, because
Mm,
looking back at all of my work, I've continued to collaborate with a bunch of people throughout the journey, um, even from the start of me coming to Christchurch. So within
mm,
7 years, people have been coming back to me to be like, hey, there's a cool project. Do you want to be a part of it? I don't know how
mm,
you would like to be a part of it, but let's
mhm.
explore that journey together. And so I would say that, like, even if you don't intend to work with someone, try and create a deeper relationship with the person, because if something interesting comes along, the first person they will think of is you.
That's very, very true. Those connections are very necessary, yeah, to continue. And you've done that since you've moved to Christchurch. It's so amazing that you took a whole year volunteering and continue to build those relationships. And that has evolved into your company, EA Curation. And for those of you that want to check out what Erica is doing with her company, do check out her website. It will show on the recording right now that I'm putting it on. So thank you so much, Erica, for your time.
No worries. Thank
Yeah,
you.
sharing all those journeys and all those tips for others who want to be a multi-potentialite and exploring all those passions. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Bye.
Bye.